With B2B buying, be like Amazon, but not Amazon.com. I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Scott Webb, President and CEO of Avionos. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Tonya.
What problems does Avionos seek to solve?
Well, Avionos is a digital consulting firm that really works with enterprise clients to understand how to engage really in a completely new way with their customers. We work both with B2B as well as B2C organizations to really help them take advantage of the platforms that are available to seek out and create new experiences with their customers.
You recently released a new report, the Avionos 2019 B2B Buyer Report. What's the goal of the report and what kind of research went into it?
Yeah, we've spoken for a long time in the industry about this consumerization of the B2B experience. And what we really wanted to be able to do was put some meat behind that and understand from a buyer's perspective, what were they really looking for? And what was driving their purchase decision when they were looking at these complex relationships that they were going to have with their suppliers? And we wanted to kind of get under the covers and beyond kind of the catchphrases into what was really driving those critical decisions about how they were going to spend that money and what was driving them away from certain suppliers and towards others.
One of the report's findings was that a large majority of B2B buyers would pay more for the same product under certain conditions. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the more kind of revelatory things that we found. We've talked for a long time. Certainly, we've heard about the importance of digital experiences and digital tools from a consumer perspective. I think this is one of the first times that we're really able to put a number for what was the payback for a business to be able to have an effective experience. And when you talk about B2B relationships, they're more complex by nature, and these are typically larger purchases, longer timelines. So the fact that this was a material factor in how a buyer was making a choice. And to that point, they were literally looking at where they were going to gain efficiencies in the relationship. And if that meant that I was going to go to a completely different supplier, I was going to be willing to pay a slight premium on that because of the value that I had placed off of all the capabilities that they were providing through a really effective experience. That's something I think that speaks to this going beyond kind of the nice to have into really a fundamental way that people are expecting to be able to engage with their business partners.
You also found that B2B purchasing has definitely moved online. Tell us where that traffic is going and what expectations do buyers have of those portals?
Yeah, we talk a lot about this being an evolution rather than a revolution, because within the B2B context, it's always been a buying criteria of who's the easiest to do business with. These aren't purchases of desire. These are purchases that are really driving critical business functions. And so they're looking for partners that are going to make their life easier and their business easier. What we see now is that the ability to self-service and the ability to have these effective tools really is a critical deciding factor into whether you as a supplier are considered easy to do business with. And so when we see these purchases going online, some cases we're really talking about the transaction itself, the being able to click the buy button. In many cases, what we're finding is it's the support around the transaction. It's the ability to look up contract-based pricing. It's the ability to understand, what do I have the rights under my contract with you to be able to purchase? What's the uniqueness of that catalog? Being able to have really clear understanding of the fulfillment process, not just like click buy and it's going to show up in 3 weeks, but really give me all of the individual order statuses throughout that, the transportation and the logistics cycle. And so all of these really create, what we call the relevant B2B experience today. And that's really where we're seeing an explosive growth in the complexity and in the prevalence of these tools for the everyday, major purchasing.
What did you find about the reality of online buying compared to the promise of online buying?
Well, certainly we found that, from the buyer's perspective, a lot of suppliers were not doing as well as they thought they were. Nearly 90% experienced some pain in the buying process. Now, it was also not a silver bullet to solve that. There wasn't a single factor. There's not a single feature that's going to suddenly solve all the buying problems. We certainly saw that the lack of relevant content, and particularly product-based content, was still a real key factor, whether that's the specific pricing, whether that's technical specifications, whether that's really the rich video to enable a deeper understanding of a product or service. that lack of a really clear communicated value proposition on the individual product still really dogs a lot of the B2B experiences that we're seeing. And even though some of the nuts and bolts of the transaction might be there, from the buyer's perspective, they're really lacking the trust and the transparency in the products that they're purchasing through the channel.
Were there any other standout revelations that surfaced in the report?
We've also, for a long time within the industry, talked about the changing demographics of the buyers. And I think it certainly came through very clearly. We're already there. Gen X and millennial buyers really make up the vast majority of today's B2B buyers. And you look at the buying authority of those digital natives, really driving the majority of what we see, in some cases, multi-million-dollar budgets. And so I think as B2B suppliers are really looking cross industry, and we looked across manufacturers, chemical manufacturing, consumer goods manufacturers, distributors. This really was a broad-based study. And what we found was that the suppliers need to understand that the individuals that they're dealing with on the other side of the transaction really have a higher expectation, certainly based off their daily experiences, but also now really driven by what they're seeing in their day-to-day business life for the quality and relevance of the experience that they're going to get from their key suppliers.
What recommendations would you offer to sellers looking to improve their buyer's experience?
Well, one of the things that we talk about in the report is to be like Amazon, but not Amazon.com. And you don't want to go chasing a feature set that you're never really going to be able to capture or maintain parity. What's important is to understand the uniqueness of your customer, understand the value of the relationship that you've built up over time, and reflect that in the digital experience. It's not about necessarily having a one-click checkout if you have a complex process manufacturing environment. What it's about is providing transparency and relevance to the relationship and the value proposition that you hold, making that really the center point of the digital experience as well. That's really where manufacturers and where suppliers can excel really beyond their digital native competitors.
Scott Webb, President and CEO of Avionos. If somebody wants to connect with you, find out more about the study, how can they do that?
Well, certainly would welcome you visiting our website. It's avionos.com. We can view the report. You can also find me on Twitter at Scott E. Webb and on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. And you can find more of my interviews right here or by going to tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.